So this meeting is being recorded. If any other persons present are doing the same, please notify the chairperson at this time. Anybody out there recording?
Yes, Jaden Grazik.
Okay, Jaden, thank you. Okay, I'm going to at the request of the vice chair, I am going to quickly share the agenda so folks can see what's on queue for the night. Are people seeing the agenda here?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Thanks, Eric. So we're gonna review some minutes quickly from May 19th. We have a discussion item with FERCog where we're going to be looking at some open space cluster development thoughts for that or the bylaw. We have a site plan review for the skateboard park on Davis Street. We have 2 ZBA recommendations, and then we have a discussion item with Clara Lopez about looking at the idea of allowing carports maybe within setbacks or other structures. And then we're going to move on to a discussion of the potential moratorium on marijuana cultivation facilities. So it's you have a long meeting here, and I want to jump right into it. I'm going to stop sharing here. If I can figure out how to do it. So are the members of the FERCog here to deliver the presentation?
Eric, are we doing the minutes first? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, George. Thank you.
And could I ask a preliminary question? I hadn't seen Natty. Is he here tonight?
He will not be here this evening.
Okay. So I wanted to ask Charles if you were elevating either David and or Amy.
I should elevate one of the two to do. Do I have a volunteer? David, did you care to be elevated? You're muted, but in my attempt to read lips, I can think you saying yes.
Yes.
Okay. You're okay with that, Amy? Okay, yes. And so I'll do a roll call actually while I'm at it. I'm Charles Roberts. I'm here. George Tlemcen,
Here.
Vice Chair. Emily Ash.
Here.
Natty Hussey is not here. David Chichester.
Here.
And Amy McMahon, alternate.
Here.
Did I miss anybody? Okay, good. All right, so first order of business is the approval of meeting minutes from May 19th. Any thoughts from board members on that? George?
Thank you, Charles. I had a couple of thoughts in the first discussion item at the bottom of page 1, the last sentence. There's a phrase, the 3 projects, and I thought that those should be specified. I think we all at the moment know what that's referring to, but I think that should be specified in the minutes so it's clear at any time someone reads them.
Okay, do you have language that you would like to insert in there?
I didn't come up with particular language, but just the 3 proposed projects on Country Club Road or something of that nature. So. Okay,
Eric, do you have a sense of what?
Yes, I'm good. I can amend the minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And the second thing is under page 3, under board and staff reports, when it mentions there will be a vacancy on the board, on the planning board in the near future, it was also discussed, and I think the minutes should reflect, we will also need to have a new planning board delegate to the Community Preservation Committee, because we did mention that as well, and so it's good to capture that in there.
Yes, that's
Seems
good. Thank
significant. Those were my 2.
Okay, those are good adds.
Thanks. With those amendments, I'll make a motion to approve. the minutes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving those minutes? Aye.
Aye.
Abstentions?
Did you get Emily?
Opposed? Emily, did you weigh in on that? She may be out of cell range. Well, we'll register Amy as an abstention, the four of us voting for it. Okay. Great, thank you. So now I did put the cart before the horse. Our first discussion item tonight is a discussion with staff from FERCog on the goals for amending section 207.1 of the open space cluster developments of the zoning ordinance.
Yes, let me just share my screen, get a presentation up.
Great, and if you could please just state your name and
Yeah, of course.
position
Hold
for
on, let me
everybody.
just
Thank you.
get this going. All right, can you see that?
No.
No. Sorry, I've never used Webex before.
It's okay. If you go down to, I think everybody should be able to share. If you just go down to the share, and then all the windows that are open on your computer will pop up, and you have to double click on the window that you want to show.
All right. Window.
You did see it very briefly, Allison, and then it went away.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Now it's not giving me as an option, so let me just reopen it. Sorry about this.
Okay.
So while Allison's finding the PowerPoint, I'll introduce myself. I'm Kimberly Noak McPhee. I'm the Land Use and Natural Resources Program Manager at the Franklin Regional Council of Governments. And Allison Gage, who's a Senior Land Use and Natural Resources Planner, is here with me tonight. And so there we go. It's
okay. You can see it now?
We see it. Yep.
Great.
So we're here to talk about ideas that we have that we wanted to share with you for updating your open space cluster development ordinance. And I'll turn it over to Allison.
That's it.
Great. Thanks, Kimberly. So as Kimberly mentioned, this was part of a project that we started last year to come up with some preliminary recommendations on how the planning board could update your open space cluster development ordinance. So I'll provide some background on the purpose of the OSCD and then review the recommendations we prepared. And please stop me as I'm presenting if you have any questions or comments. The slides are really just meant as a visual reference as we go through this. But yeah, please stop me with any questions.
So
I just
Allison,
wanted
Allison, are you able to put that in slide view? Because what we see is the layout view with a document recovery pane. So things are a little small.
Oh, okay. So that is the full slide. It comes up as a full slide on my screen. It's still not showing the full slide for you all?
Yeah, so
No, it's showing like the layout view with the slides on the left.
Okay.
Tab slideshow, it will view as a PowerPoint presentation. That should resolve it. It should get rid of the navigation bar in the left side.
Present. Yeah, I'm clicking on from beginning, and so it comes up on my screen as a full slide. Still not working?
No, it's just some kind of technical glitch. It's okay.
All right, let me get rid of the notes panel.
Is it use presenter view? Is that the problem?
No, I don't have presenter view on.
It's checked. Under,
Still no?
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Is this large enough?
That's better.
Yeah,
That's
we can see it.
Okay. Sorry.
Not a problem.
So just as a background on what an open space cluster development is, they're used to regulate new subdivisions of land in a manner that maximizes the protection of natural resources while providing for new construction. So on the far left, you can see this parcel of undisturbed land. And then in this middle example is an example of if it was developed using conventional subdivision regulations. So each unit has a 2-acre plot of land. And then on the far right is an example if the plot was developed using natural resource protection zoning, which is similar to an open space cluster development. And you can see that all of the development is nicely clustered into one section of the parcel with much of the open space preserved.
Excuse me just a second. Sorry, Allison. Charles, I would find it, if we could solve the technical glitch, more helpful. I know that a lot of work has been put into this presentation, and I know people aren't supposed to use the chat for substantive exchanges, but there were a couple suggestions in the chat to resolve the technical glitch. So I just want to throw that out there.
All right. Did you? I didn't see those, George. Did you have some?
People are saying you have to open or share the new window. So whatever new window, Allison, you have open, I guess.
All right, let me stop sharing. I'm going to try sharing my screen instead of the application.
No,
How about that?
Yes.
Better.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Appreciate your patience.
Yeah, and Kimberly, so I'm just logged in through Webex through the internet. So if there are questions in the chat, can you help me field those? I can't see them come in.
Yeah, in general, we shouldn't be. Yeah, we shouldn't be fielding chat questions just because it's a open meeting.
Okay, great.
Issue.
So this is an example from the Mass Smart Growth Toolkit, which shows a completed OSCD in Ipswich, Mass. So this project preserves 74% of the land as open space. The single family homes are on 0.2 acre lots with small yards. It features an environmentally sensitive design. And other benefits include less infrastructure to build and maintain because the homes are in one compact area, a reduction of impervious surfaces and stormwater runoff due to shorter driveways, and less water consumption due to reduced yard sizes. In terms of local examples, I know Wendell has similar zoning, and a project was recently approved that conserves 80% of the parcel, but hasn't been built yet, but that's an example of a recently approved project in the area. In Greenfield, OSCDs are allowed in the urban residential, suburban residential, and rural residential zoning districts and are subject to site plan review by the planning board. OSCDs are not required. Developers may abide by traditional subdivision regulations instead of building in accordance with the provisions of the OSCD. Permitted uses include single family, 2-family, and or multifamily dwellings, but they cannot exceed 30% of the total number of dwelling units in mixed-use developments. The minimum lot size per unit can be reduced to the minimum lot area requirement of the urban residential district, which is about 0.2 acres. Open space requirements differ slightly between the urban residential zone and the suburban residential and rural residential zones, in that the urban residential zone, the common open space shall be equivalent to at least 25% of the land area in the tract, whereas in the other two residential zones, the open space requirement is also 25%, but does not include land determined to be wetlands, floodplains, or slopes in excess of 25%. So that's a background on the city's current OSCD. It was prepared back in 2007. So we've come up with some recommendations to update it with some of the city's goals from recent planning initiatives, such as your sustainable master plan. So the first recommendation is to increase the amount of protected open space in the rural residential zoning district to 50%. Due to the lot sizes in the urban residential zone and the suburban residential zone, it would likely be difficult to increase the open space requirements. A couple of years ago, Mass Audubon developed a framework for supporting low impact development in Massachusetts communities and came up with specific recommendations for open space residential subdivisions. Their recommendations are designed to minimize disturbance to the natural features on the landscape and reduce the creation of impervious surfaces. Local communities such as Shelburne and Leiden have higher requirements for protected open space in their regulations. Another way of updating the OSCD is to develop a density bonus system to incentivize characteristics Greenfield would like to see in subdivisions, which could also help to implement goals set forth in your sustainable master plan. The board could adopt a density bonus system to incentivize where open space is protected, create more affordable housing, energy efficient homes, or to protect agricultural land and the mapped river corridor. I put in some examples here from Sunderland's flexible development bylaw to give you an idea of what it could look like. They developed a point system. So the more points a developer obtains, the higher the density bonus. Some of the characteristics Sunderland included are selling farmland to a farmer so it stays in use, protecting forest land that is contiguous to already protected open space, or implementing a significant ecological project. These are examples that are relevant to their town, but of course the board could come up with your own characteristics and your own point system that would incentivize the features that are most important to the city. Last year, Greenfield developed a pollinator action plan with support from the FERCog, which included recommendations for amending local zoning ordinances to include pollinator-friendly language.
Put the cool air upward.
Oh,
The suggested recommendation here is for the submittal requirements, which notes that the landscaping plan should utilize native plants and trees that provide pollinator habitat where feasible. These next couple of recommendations move away from direct updates to the OSCD, but would influence what is included in OSCD plan developments. Because site plan review is a requirement for an OSCD, the site plan review and approval ordinance could be amended to include some of the following requirements, depending on the board's priorities. The examples on the right-hand side here are adopted from the town of Deerfield's Green Performance Development Standards, which were recently adopted. So just as an example, there could be requirements for saving large trees, orienting buildings for solar access, requiring the maximum use of native plants and plants that will provide pollinator habitat, and ensuring that the design protects land in agricultural use or land along the mapped Green River corridor. We can also work on updating the OSCD so that it has language that promotes the protection of the mapped river corridor. You can see the mapped river corridor on the map here. It's this dark green area that extends beyond the 100-year floodplain, which is the area that includes the active river channel, associated wetlands, floodplain, and the adjacent slope. Rivers are dynamic systems that change over time, so the river corridor is a better estimate of where future flooding may occur, especially when considering the impacts of climate change. There's a bit of land that extends beyond the 100-year floodplain in the downtown area, so it is worth exploring how that land could be protected either through the OSCD ordinance or through separate zoning initiatives. The last recommendation worth considering is to further encourage low impact development by decreasing the width of roads and subdivisions. Greenfield zoning ordinance was recently updated to incorporate low impact development, which is great, but this is another area where the OSCD ordinance would benefit. Looking again at Mass Audubon's best practices up here in this chart, they suggest having as low as an 18-foot width for lanes plus a 2-foot shoulder. This is a bit smaller than the 24-foot width that is currently required on rural roads, according to the city's subdivision regulations. On the left here, you can see what a subdivision with wide roads and no stormwater retention looks like on this top photo. versus a more narrow road and some stormwater management practices in place. So that is the full slideshow. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but it would be great to hear from the board what elements you're most interested in as we move through this project of trying to get some updates drafted.
Thanks a lot, Allison. Nice presentation. Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that's kind of interesting is sort of thinking about that I was the point system and looking for ways of increasing density for affordable housing, and also just to be able to sensitively develop land, leaving sort of large tracts of particular lots, open space. And so in Greenfield, like, are there areas that FERCog's thought about specifically where there's the most amount of potential for these sorts of developments, and yeah, just some of your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's something I would need to do further analysis on. We could do that through GIS and look at what areas in town or in the city have not been developed, especially in that in the urban or in the residential district, the RC district. And then I could get a better answer to that and then we could figure out what features we should protect.
What? Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, because lots of times we think about it's one thing to sort of think about zoning initiatives and ideas like the open space development. But then you think about, well, where's it going, and what's the actual potential in terms of real development in town, and where would these developments actually be going, and just what are the land resources and who controls them, and what incentives are there for people controlling land resources to maybe want to participate in something like this?
Folks, the one labeled Greenfield Planning Board, please mute yourself.
Streaming and Xfinity Mobile, all for what you could pay wireless companies for just one 5G unlimited line. And now, also with Xfinity,
Are you, Charles, able to mute them?
Oh, stop what you're doing with your
Yeah, I'm going to mute all.
Sorry about that, Allison.
That's okay.
Hey, Allison, you're going to have to unmute yourself now.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely something I can work with our GIS specialist on. Maybe we could come up with some type of quick diagram and take a better look at that.
really boring.
David?
We'll go get our dinner.
Allison, thanks for your presentation. It's really interesting. I would like to ask you to elaborate just a little bit more on the point system. When you generate bonus points, how do you use bonus points?
So in that example from Sunderland, let me just
We're gonna put the TV on if you're not gonna go anywhere right now. I'll just listen to it this way.
So for the point system, for each of those characteristics, the planning board assigned a certain number of points, and then they want the developer to get to a certain number before giving them the density bonus. So for example, the protecting forest land with binding agreement to ensure that the forest is mapped with a green certification, that's worth 10 points. But that's not enough to get them the full density bonus. So whatever the city would like to prioritize, you could kind of encourage developers to take on those or to abide by those certain characteristics to get to the full threshold to earn them a density bonus. So in the case of Sunderland, their lowest The lowest density is, I think it was 10%, and you could get up to 20 or 30% based on the number of points that you earned. And I know the city of Northampton does something similar with the point system, and they allow developers to get up to a 15% density bonus, and that's all related to affordable housing. So if the city was just interested in affordable housing, then you could have your entire point system related to how many affordable units you'd be developing.
So does the density bonus work that suppose you get a 10% density bonus, you've hit a point threshold. Does that mean that all the lots can be 10% smaller, so you get more lots within a given area?
Yeah, it's not necessarily saying that the lots are 10% smaller. It's that you're allowed to build 10% more than what's allowed under the traditional zoning.
Okay. So it doesn't necessarily have to do with the amount of open space or buildable area. It has to do more just with what zoning allows.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's interesting. And so there's all kinds of things we can start looking at with the low impact development methods, affordability, the tree, saving trees, planting trees, the pollinator thing. So there's that whole sort of spectrum of sort of incentives that we could use to help people think of you do, it's the quid pro quo. You hit these incentive marks, and we'll give you a couple more points in density.
Mm-hmm. A couple more units, yeah.
Yeah.
Allison, I wonder if we could put together a couple of examples of how a density bonus might look.
Yeah, definitely. I know a couple of local communities have done it, so I could put that together in another memo if that would be helpful to look at how other communities have done it and what they used as incentives.
I know that Northampton. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, and we can share the PowerPoint. We can send the PowerPoint to Eric too, so he can share it with you all, and
great.
you can have it for a reference.
Thank you. George?
Thanks, Charles. And the screen can be unshared now because it's just basically showing duplicate of all of us at the moment that I'm seeing.
Yeah, it's not my screen.
Right, I wondered. Okay, someone's sharing a screen. If they could unshare, I guess. But I do appreciate the affordability component as far as the bonus system being included in thinking about, and I also the orientation of the houses for it to be solar ready was something that's one of those ideas I hadn't heard of or thought of before. So I appreciate that thoroughness of that kind of component being included in this.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of options, and you can be as creative as you'd like in terms of the incentives you come up with. I know you all have done a lot of plans related to climate resiliency, so it could be a nice opportunity to have those incorporated into your OSCD.
Yeah, and to continue on the low impact development issue, as you noted, Allison, there had been some changes within the zoning ordinance about LID, but you were saying there were some things that would be more specific to open cluster development.
Yeah, I think it seemed like a lot of the Eric, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the LID regulations were related to parking. So these would be more related to getting provisions for LID in your subdivision regulations.
Correct. We did do some in our subdivision regulations, but we could do more.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
With those lid regulations we put into the subdivision ordinance, were those mandatory or were those optional? Eric, I can't remember.
Those were this part of it, so mandatory.
Right. Okay. So what would you recommend for sort of next steps in terms of thinking about our ordinance? Allison and Kimberly.
So I can work on that, looking at the as you mentioned, areas in the city where this would be more likely to apply, and putting together the draft list of the incentive system. But in terms of working on specific revisions, is there any, are you interested in hearing more about the incentive system before we start drafting anything else? Would that work?
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems like a sort of a list of for instance, if we were going to think about this, the point system, you know, a list of options that might make sense for Greenfield to think about, you know, based on, you know, our land resources and, you know, what would work for us, and then you know, maybe as a starting point.
Okay.
I think the board needs to also, we need to do homework and re-educate ourselves on our own on the ordinance as it stands and understand exactly what it says, and then come back to you as after hearing this presentation and sort of some of the thoughts and ideas that are floating around, apply those to a second and more thorough reading of the ordinance ourselves, then come back to you with, you know, some ideas and questions.
That sounds good to me.
Okay.
A question, Mr. Chairman, time frame, and also Kimberly, time frame do you think for getting this for the next meeting that we could meet with you?
Well, the funding that we have right now expires at the end of the calendar year, December 31st. So we could, if the board has a fairly clear schedule, you know, we can try to accommodate that. I mean, I noticed that you have, you know, a bunch of hearings after we're done. So if you want to let us know when it would be time to come back, I think Allison, we could probably accommodate that. Were you thinking next month?
Possibly next month or the month after, if that gives you enough time.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure the agenda is light and basically just you on it for that particular agenda.
Famous last words, right?
We'll try to do that.
Yeah. Maybe for the benefit of the public who may be listening in and just sort of wondering what this process is that FERCog has a and Eric, jump in, or Alison or Kimberly, jump in if I'm getting this wrong. But so FERCog has grants and money to help us write zoning ordinances along certain lines. One of these being the open space community development sort of initiative. And so we're in this process is just about sort of talking about the options that are out there. How could our ordinance be improved? And then they would work with us and with Eric specifically to draft an ordinance initiative that would then go through the process of public hearings and, you know, review by the city council ultimately. So that's what we're doing here, and that's what one of the great resources that FERCog has and is offering us here.
And well, thank you. That was very, very kind. And we also, we're waiting on another grant from, I'm waiting for the paperwork from the state. So after this current funding that we have runs out, we should have another pot of money that we can use to continue the work beyond the end of December, because oftentimes these projects, you know, take time and a lot of thought and public input. So we hope to not disappear in December.
But if December was sort of the ultimate, like suppose so the end of December is when we have to have everything completed by, then that gives us enough time. Does that give us enough time to sort of meet a couple times, and then for you to draft the initiative that then, or the zoning ordinance that we would then initiate? I mean, I'm assuming your involvement wouldn't be necessarily required through the whole sort of public hearing process and everything like that, unless you wanted to be there to sort of represent it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that we can certainly shoot for having, a completion date of December. I just didn't want people to feel anxious about the money running out, because I should be able to have additional funding available.
Okay,
in January.
that's great. Well, good. Thank you. This is exciting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, we're excited. We're always happy to work in Greenfield. Allison just finished updating the open space and recreation plan not too long ago.
Great.
Thank you.
Great job on the open space plan.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. See you again.
Thank you.
All right.
We'll be
Thank
reaching
you.
out about coordinating a time for more the next meeting.
Sounds great.
All
All right. Talk to you all later.
Thank you. Good night.
Great.
Good night. Okay. The next order of business is a site plan review. The application of the City of Greenfield Recreation Department for property located at the north end of the Chapman Davis Street Municipal Parking Lot for site plan review and approval pursuant to section 208.4 of the zoning ordinance in order to allow the construction of a new 11,000 square foot skateboard park at this location. Is the presenter here to walk us through the project?
Yes. Hi, Charles. This is Christy.
Hi, Christy.
I am here. Yeah, so I believe Eric had passed around the construction documents that I believe everybody has looked at. We obviously received the park grant. I'm sure many of you have heard, and capital funding and then fundraising to complete this project. And it is scheduled to be completed June of 2023. And part of the process is obviously your review of the design. I do have a color graphic I can just pop up if you guys want to see that. I'm not sure if you guys saw any of the color images.
Yeah, we did. They were really helpful, but if you want to bring them up and put them on the screen, that would be great.
Sure. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
So this is a detail. Obviously, it's at the north end of the Chapman Davis Street lot. The site includes both beginner and advanced level pieces, technical jumps, ramps, all that kind of stuff that scares me, but I'm not a skateboarder. But this is what everybody had asked for with the design. We have ADA access, we have ADA parking, we have a shade structure, we have improved drainage, lots of trees, as you can see, to provide natural shade, landscaping. We kept the 4 current parking lot lights, so there's no change in the design for the light structures over there. We also have a refill water bottle station that will be available so that anybody in the park can use and refill water bottles. And then one new thing that I've been requesting for many years, and we're going to implement it here, is a solar charging station for cell phones. Will be here as well. Access to the facility can come either on Davis or Chapman. And there's parking, as you can see, around. We kept the the same horseshoe parking around the space. And it is approximately 11,000 square feet, transforming a parking lot into a beautiful new park amenity for the city. I'm not sure. I do have another picture if you want to see that one. Let's see, stop sharing. This one is a better, larger visual for you as well. And I'm not sure if anybody has any specific questions at all, but it's been a long time coming, as many of you know, and we're just really excited to move forward with this. And construction can start July 1st, but obviously we need to bid it, and award probably will start in the fall with some earthwork. And then the major construction will happen probably in the spring, but completed in June of 23.
Thanks, Christy. Could you describe some of the what the materials are here? Is this all sort of, is it all concrete? Is it rubberized stuff? Like what's the primary surface here?
Sure, it is concrete skate park, and that's because it is the most durable, longest lasting. Any of you that were here probably about 12 years ago, we used to have a steel and wooden ramp structure, and obviously the wood decays and the steel has a lot of rust issues. So the modern design is that it's all concrete. What you see is like the shaded area are the slopes in this picture. So where you transition from piece to piece. And then the colored structure is really just colored concrete called willow, actually. And then the stairs have a rail, which you can see there's a skateboarder going down the rail. And then there's coping where they, which is both round and square, where the skateboarders grind to do their tricks, and that is all built into the concrete as well. So this is a low maintenance facility, the way it's designed.
Charles, I'll just follow up with that if I could. I had
Sure.
to look up the term coping when I saw it on the plans. I had never heard it used in this way. And what is that? The rails are metal, but what is the coping material for the edges?
Yeah, it's like pipe. Let's see, I don't know. Can't remember what page that was on in the plan. I think that was highlighted in page 3. It's like, obviously I'm not a skateboarder myself, but that is, like I said, that's the different like sort of bevels of how they grind and slide on the metal. So if it's round, they can slide differently than if it's a square, and how they jump off. I'm not sure if that helps, George.
Thank you, Christine. Is it metal material, or is that the coping as well as the rails? Is that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks. I just wasn't clear on that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's basically a slidable, super durable kind of a surface that you can
like
grind
a pipe
on, I guess, is the parlance, right?
Yeah. It's the same company that did this design also did the design at Uni Park, Framingham, Quincy. They are building a very large park right now in Worcester. So they're familiar with Western Mass, and we just need to find obviously the contractor that can make this all happen. It's beautiful. I can't wait to see it finished.
Is that all granite curbing around the perimeter of it?
Yes, 6-inch, I believe.
Okay.
It matches the existing height of the curb that's there. Like around, you can see by the lights the existing curb in the parking lot at the bump outs.
One thing I was thinking about as I was looking at these images is that this park kind of resides as an island in the middle of this parking area with no kind of pedestrian connection to Chapman Street or Davis Street. And for something that's like essentially a pedestrian, I mean, it's a skateboard park, but hopefully, it's accessed by foot and by pedestrian. I'm just wondering if any thought was put into making intentional connections, pedestrian connections across the parking to those sidewalks, either as sort of like raised traffic calming structures, painted crosswalks, just some way of sort of maybe directing pedestrian traffic through what's otherwise just an open parking lot.
Do you mean like from Chapman and Davis Street to the park? Is that what you're like in the street? That's a great suggestion. I certainly can talk with DPW about that. Our design is just inside, obviously, for the skate park itself. But I think that's a great point, Charles.
Thanks. David?
Couple of questions. I noticed that there are lights at the edge of the area. Is it designed to be used at night? And if so, what are the hours of use?
So all of our parks are dawn to dusk, so that would be the same for this park. And so there are no additional lights into the facility because it's not designed to be used at nighttime.
And the other question I had has to do with really the maintenance of it. Is our DPW is assigned the task of cleanup and rubbish container removal and sweeping and whatever is needed?
As far as sweeping, the borders themselves, I'm sure will sweep. We have selected trees and shrubs that do not drop nuts or fruits or any of that kind of stuff that would cause an accident with the wheels of the skateboards. As far as any sort of maintenance issues, it would fall under DPW and myself and my staff if there's something minor that we can tend to with the recreation department and our staff. Underneath, you can see under the pavilion, there is one rubbish and recycling can set up there. And that is put in a location that's easy for the truck to come in and empty like we have at our other parks.
Thank you.
Sure.
I had a question. Is there, I don't see it, and it might just be not feasible, but is there any plan for a drinking fountain at this park?
Yes, Emily, you might not have heard me. Let's see if I can see.
Sorry, my phone cut out earlier while I was driving home, so I apologize.
It's kind of hard to see here. I can go back, but it's kind of, can you see my mouse?
I can.
On the screen. It's like right in here, in this area. It's a water and refill station. And it's about 70 feet. The connection will come off of Chapman here and come right in.
Okay. So then while I'm asking about things you might have already said, the over all the way to the right-hand side, it almost looks like a memorial monument or something, the wall.
Oh, here. Yes. So this is our special art feature. I will hire an artist to paint it, but it is designed to look like, if you can see as I zoom in, does it look familiar to anybody?
Like Poet's Seat.
Exactly, yep. And so it has a special skateboard element name, which is leaving me right now, but they can ride up this and then they turn and come down. So it's all concrete, it's solid. I believe it's 8 feet tall from down here, from bottom up. But obviously we need to I'll hire an artist to paint the brick work, but it's all, again, solid concrete.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for mentioning that. I forgot. It was one of my favorite parts.
And Christy, is there like I'm sorry if I missed this, is there a bike rack kind of storage area?
You know, there is not. And I had a lot of conversation with our designer on that. And basically, he said that they are a waste of money because somebody that comes to this park will come on a skateboard and they're using it. They will not like put it in any sort of rack. And then he said the bikes themselves, the same thing. If they're using the facility, they'll be on the bikes. So at this point, we don't. If it does show a need, that's something that we can easily purchase and add later.
George?
Yeah, that actually was one issue I was going to bring up. I appreciated, from a multimodal point of view, I appreciated your point, Charles, and I second it about having some designated pedestrian access from the sidewalks. But I'm not a skateboard aficionado, but I believe I've seen some people who carry their skateboards in various ways on the bikes, and certainly with bike racks and backpacks and stuff, people could carry them. And I think any facility, it could be people coming to watch people, could be people coming to hang out there, and just because it's a beautiful park-like area. So I really think, especially given our community commitment to multimodality, we shouldn't have any new facility without a bike rack. Even though this expert said it's unlikely that people who are primarily skateboarding will come, but someone might come from some place where it's too far a distance to skateboard to get there. I get it that it's also it's a form of recreation, but also transportation. But some people might be coming from a distance where it's not feasible. So I would strongly recommend that proactively a bike rack be an installed bike rack be included.
I agree with George. I was actually thinking, and I hear what your expert is saying, that people who come are going to be like BMXing or whatever it is that they do on their bikes. But what about, I feel like this park is really centered in there's a lot of close by younger kids, and the parents are going to be biking to help their kids learn. And so where are the parents' bikes going to be safely put, kind of thing. So that was my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's great feedback. We certainly can figure out a location to add something. George, as you know, I'm a big biking advocate myself, so that's why I struggled with it. But yeah, we'll look closer and figure out where we can add a bike rack for sure.
Thank you.
And just to add to that, I'm thinking that a couple of park benches might be nice. But that may be off the chart. But I was thinking that I might like to go down and watch, and I would like to have a place to sit.
Yep.
Zoom in.
You can sit. We have 2 benches right underneath here.
Oh,
You're in the
you're
shade.
sitting, Dave. You're already sitting there.
Yeah, there you are. Yeah, that was, a lot of feedback from the community was about having a shade structure, water, and a place to sit. So we tried to hit everything, just the bike rack, but we'll figure out a way to get that in there, George.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chrissy. I would agree. I think bike racks are just an essential part of life, and especially something that's, whether it's skateboarding or anything else, it's an outdoor recreation facility, and I think having bikes there would be really appropriate and nice to be able to park them and lock them. George?
Thanks, Charles. Yeah, a few comments, questions regarding the landscaping. One was, I was intrigued that the logo of the Greenfield Tree Committee, which is not an official city entity, is on the page AS12 as far as the landscape. I mean, I was curious of their involvement. It looks like they were consulted, I assume.
Yeah, the Greenfield Tree Committee and Greening Greenfield has been supportive of this project for many years, and we worked with the Mary Chickwin from the Tree Committee, who was at all of our public meetings and worked with us on the plantings, the location, the kind of trees, and so our planner, Brad, he just took her design, like we shared the layout and everything, and she planted the trees around well, I don't know if she used CAD or what, but, and then we just put it into the plan. And yeah, so we just kept their logo because it was all on one page.
Thanks. And I appreciate that it's a mix of deciduous and evergreens, and that almost all of them are native. I didn't realize arborvitae weren't native, but I was pleased about that. I did have one question. The strip, the southernmost strip,
Yep.
is where there had been the in recent years the designed rain garden. And I wondered if any of the rain garden features are being retained in there.
They are. It's hard to see in here, George, but they're actually, we're expanding it. I think it's about 6 feet. So we'll remove the northern curb that's there and then move it further north. So there's a larger buffer there. So we're extending that rain garden, and we're doing a lot of work on drainage underneath here. In the plan, there is, I believe it's 5 inlets in the middle of the concrete structure to help with the water runoff. Like right now, it just all runs north and towards that retaining wall on the north end. And so we're connecting it to the city's infrastructure underneath.
Can I go with something else, Charles? I don't know
Yes.
if anybody else had anything about the landscaping or.
No, go ahead, George.
In looking at the sign, proposed sign for the park rules, one thing that came to my attention was the 4th bullet lists the hours. I was looking for something like dawn to dusk, but it says 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And I'm just trying to be aware, because there's a certain amount of noise most of us associate with hearing skateboards grinding, etc. And so just from the point of view of the impact on nearby neighbors, I was wondering about those hours.
Yeah, that is not, that's just a placeholder. If you look at the notes, it says we'll confirm with the city because there's other things that we need to add into the rule sign. So that was just so that the contractor knew when we prepared the bid documents that there will be a park rules sign.
Okay. And this may be the same type of thing, but again, from a noise consideration, I saw that in the 5th bullet, one of the guidelines is keep the music down. And I know my bias would be to prohibit, just as profanity is listed as being prohibited and that kind of thing. My suggestion would be to prohibit amplified music at all. It's not essential to the activity unless there were some, city approved event or something like that. That would be my suggestion, just to be, again, sensitive to the neighbors, and this isn't something that would inhibit, but it could be a nuisance that's not essential to the activity.
Good point.
Yep, the rec commission is working on the rules and stuff, so I'll certainly share that with them as well, George.
Can I comment on that, George? So I agree that I could definitely foresee it being like a nuisance, but I think it's important to have that rule there just because these kids are going to be bringing their Bluetooth speakers. That's what's going to be being brought. I mean, not the big boom boxes of your day, but the Bluetooth speakers. That I think that's what that rule references. Am I right, Christy?
Yeah, I think that's like, again, this is the designer Brad's just basic sign rule, but each city makes up their own rules. And obviously we have to have certain signs in our park so that the police can enforce all the rules and regulations that the city has created.
Right. I mean, it's also the kind of thing that, if it becomes a problem, it can be addressed, perhaps. But
I mean, I can tell you that. I mean, we had kids as young as I think 8 was the youngest who was at some of these public meetings, and obviously adults who are going to be using this facility. And together, I think they'll certainly help self-police. And, you know, I will definitely, like all the parks, make as many stops as often and deal with any sort of issues that come up. We will also have 2 entry signs, one on Chapman and one on Davis Street, like we have the other beautiful new park signs that we put up a couple years ago as well.
And will those have the dog poopy things too?
Oh, these are the large like Beaconfield sign, Shattuck Park sign.
Sorry, I was thinking of the new ones because one just got installed right across from my house, so I think that's like they're right on my horizon.
Yeah, I didn't think about a dog waste station, but we certainly can coordinate with DPW if that becomes an issue here as well. But I hope nobody's bringing their dog to the skate park.
Okay.
And I'll ask one other seasonal related question. I mean, sometimes dedicated bike paths are cleared of snow during the winter and stuff like that, if people are intrepid enough to use them. Was there any plan for the city to try to keep this snow free in the winter, or would that be just up to users to initiate if they want to do that?
Yeah, definitely the latter. I wish we had a robust park department where we had enough staff to maintain the bike paths and stuff like this and clean it in the winter, but we know that sidewalks and roads are their first priority.
Sure.
So apparently at Turner's, a lot of the community comes out and actually shovels and clears the snow. It's a lot like our ice rink that we have at Beacon. If we get behind, some people go and shovel the ice rink as well. So again, the community will be involved to help do that kind of stuff.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll comment again. I think the department and volunteer collaboration in this town is great. Thinking of the clay tennis courts, for example, I've talked about those before in the example you gave. So thank you, Christy.
Mm-hmm.
Eric, has there been any correspondence from DPW or fire or police or anybody?
A transmittal memo was sent to all key departments. We received only one response from the health director, who had no comments or issues.
Okay.
If I can comment, the DPW, Alan Twarog, our engineering superintendent, he has been involved from all the design aspects and has been in touch with our designer, has looked at everything as well.
Okay. Has there been any conversations with the police about the park and how they might be monitoring it, or just what their interaction might be?
I have had conversations with the community, I forget what it's called, the community division, Officer Gordon, and I'm forgetting her superior. I can see his face, but I can't remember his name. So they're aware, and that's why when we were talking about the rules, the ordinance and stuff that has to be posted so they can enforce any sort of complaints that we have, issues using it at night, or if there's a volume issue or a litter issue, graffiti, that kind of stuff. So in that aspect, we've had conversations with them, yes.
Okay. Also, I don't know, this may not be an issue, but I was just thinking about the liability issue with, it says people could get hurt, here, and they're doing acrobatics. And are there any issues with that, with the city's potential liability on something like this?
It's like any other city park, like the swimming pool as an example, there are rules posted of things that they shouldn't do. Doesn't mean that they don't follow those rules. We just do our best to catch them. But any city facility falls under the city liability insurance, and it's a park.
And I know the first rule on that sample board is very clear, not just about the risk of the activity itself, but that you're using it with other riders of varying degrees of skill. So.
Any other comments from the board?
I'll just say it's been a long time coming. I know a lot of people been working very hard on this for a long time. I think the location, I know various locations have been discussed over the years. I think the location is great because it's so adjacent to and you know, involved with the downtown area. So yeah.
I would agree.
So I would make a motion to approve this with two conditions. One being creation of some crosswalk to connect the sidewalks on both streets to the park area, and the other would be the addition of some bicycle parking.
I'd second.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'll do a roll call. Charles Roberts, aye. George Tlemcen,
Yes.
Emily Ash,
Aye.
David Chichester.
Yes.
Is that everybody who's voting?
Yep.
All right, good. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Christy.
Thank you.
Okay,
Here.
we got two ZBA recommendations coming up here. One is for the application of Thomas Powers for property located at 80 Munson Street, which is located in the suburban residential zoning district for a special permit pursuant to section 206.2E and 208.3 of the zoning ordinance in order to allow the installation of a 6-foot high wooden stockade fence within the front yard setback area along Champney Road at this location. Is the applicant here to make a presentation?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, great. Yeah, if you could just state your name and address for the record.
Thomas Powers, 80 Munson Street, Greenfield.
Okay, thank you. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your fence?
I want to put a 6-foot fence on a corner of Munson and Champney. The fence will be 52 feet back from the corner of Munson Street. That there's no obstruction for oncoming vehicles coming your way. It's beyond the 25-foot mark. So that's that.
Okay. Just getting something. Just want to see if I could get the little plan here up.
While you're working on that, Charles, could I ask a question of Eric?
Sure.
Eric, and I apologize if I missed it. I was looking through the relevant sections of the ordinance. I wasn't, and I must have missed it. I wasn't clear what of this plan is triggering the need for a special permit.
Yeah, so because this is a corner lot, so he's on the so a corner lot has 2 front yard setbacks and 2 side yard setbacks.
Yes. Oh, okay.
And no rear yard setback, which is why he's in the front back set area with the 6-foot fence. You can have a 4-foot high fence in that area, but it requires special permit approval to go above 4 feet in the setback area.
Thank you for retraining me.
So it's along this edge here, right, Eric? That I'm running my cursor along.
Champney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's specifically for this length of fence. That is it a special permit, or is it is it a variance?
It is a special permit.
Got it.
Okay.
So it's that section along Champney specifically, as Charles was saying, that is the trigger.
That's correct. Because he wants to put it right on, the property line there.
Right.
So that's the reason why it requires, our ordinance allows the zoning board through a special permit to vary the fence regulations.
So no fence here. No fence here. Then you get to the edge of where the house kind of aligns,
Right.
and there would be a 6-foot fence, 6-foot tall fence, which is probably like right around here, this height.
Right.
And it would be, would this be running in front of the trees?
The trees are gone.
Oh, the trees are gone.
Yeah.
Trees are on town property.
So this is
Trees
an
are
old
gone,
Google
which is
image.
one of the reasons Mr. Power stated he wants to put the fence up because the trees have been
Oh,
removed.
right. Okay.
So that lends to my question, Mr. Powers. I was wondering if you could just, I see what you wrote in your application, but I was wondering if you could just tell the board your reasons for wanting the fence and specifically why you want the 6-foot high fence variance. What value is it going to bring to you know, like what does it mean to you?
Privacy. I have no trees on the property. I need privacy. That's all.
And a solid 4-foot fence wouldn't give you what you need.
Why should I have I'm 52 feet back from the corner. The town is saying 25 feet back. It doesn't hinder anything, any obstruction on any oncoming traffic at all.
No, we hear that, but if you could just, Mr. Powers, if you could just answer the specific question of what difference does the 48 inches versus the 60 inches that you're 72 inches that you're requesting, just how is that going to make a difference to your privacy?
I'm 5'8". I'd like to have some privacy. 6-foot fence. I don't see the big deal. I don't know what the big deal is here. There's no. I mean, I could put a fence step down Champney, no problem. Put it across the back, no problem. The only problem is the 6-foot fence facing Munson Street, and that's 52 feet back from the corner of Munson Street.
All right. Well, Mr. Powers, thank you. It was just a question. We're not here against you. We just want to hear your reasoning.
I wrote you a letter on it. I want to have a place for my grandkids to come over and have parties and have barbecues in the backyard without being exposed to everything around me.
All right, and that's what I wanted to hear on public record. So I appreciate you explaining it to us. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I mean, you know, fences. You know, this is a very open, sort of, you know, generous
All those trees are gone.
Neighborhood and streets. There are not a lot of fences here. I mean, if everybody along the street decided they wanted 6-foot fences along the length of their street, it would really change the character of the street. And there's a reason why, you know, if you're right on the street, it's a 4-foot fence back to, you know, the setback line of the building. So, I mean, I understand your reasoning, Mr. Powers, but it's like if it sort of has to do with the overall character of the neighborhood there. And I guess have you spoken to your neighbors and reached out to your neighbors?
Yes, you had mailed out letters to the neighbors, and you mailed them out. All my neighbors got the letters. Any complaints?
What he's referring to, Mr. Chairman, is that the zoning board will be meeting next Thursday. All abutters within 300 feet were notified of the public hearing. Yep. And we did not hear from any abutters in the plus or negative. So assuming they have no issues with the proposed fence.
Eric, if you could just, sorry, Charles, is it okay?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So the, again, the only question of Mr. Powers obviously wants 6-foot rather than 4-foot fence for this entirety. And the section that goes from the garage to the
opposite side of the house.
Excuse me, I was talking to Mr. Park. The part, Eric, that goes from the corner of the garage to the property line, the property line with the adjacent neighbor, the fencing in the back of the property, that would all be no problem to have it 6 feet, correct?
Correct.
And the only issue is that, and even this section that goes from the corner of the house to Champney, but what is the setback there that would have to be, since it's a side?
Yes,
Since it's a
because
corner.
it's on Chaffney Street and Munson Street, the setback is 25 feet, which is significant.
25 feet, yeah, gotcha.
So this, go ahead, George, sorry.
No, that's okay. Because having, been there today, any other house, you were painting a scenario, Charles, any other house that wanted on the street to have a fence would have to go through the same process if they wanted to do this. And it is a distinct property because it's a corner property, so it has a distinct criteria. I didn't, looking at the specific site and seeing that it is the front yard would be unfenced for the most part. The front yard in front of the house on Munson Street. This didn't strike me as particularly a concern as far as aesthetics. So I'm just offering that impression for the board.
Thanks, George.
But I'm also interested in hearing other board members' perspective, of course.
So Eric, it's an 8-foot fence. I mean, a 6-foot fence it's not a variance that Mr. Powers is looking for. It's a special. It says 6-foot fence, which is allowed by special permit.
Yes, the fence regulations within our zoning ordinance allows a specific statement that says the ZBA can, upon a special permit, vary these requirements. So it is not a variance, the word I use, vary, but it's not a variance, it's a special permit, and our ordinance allows the ZBA to do that. So
okay,
it'll be their ultimate decision.
And
go ahead, George.
And I think, Charles, it does, because it's a special permit, which does involve notification of the neighbors. And typically the neighbors wouldn't express their opinion or necessarily to us, because we're only making a recommendation.
Right.
So, but Eric hasn't received negative comments from neighbors. Just
right.
So it does allow neighbors to weigh in if they think they would be affected in some way by this. Either support it, they might support it, or they might have concerns.
Yep.
Just mentioning that.
Yeah, thank you. Well,
Dave has a comment.
David?
Do we know how close the property line is to the road?
Typically, the right of way is 50 feet or 40 feet with 28 feet of pavement. So you could have up to, 12 to around 12 feet beyond the edge of the pavement. That is not someone's lawn, but the city's right away.
So the property line could be sort of like where my cursor is going.
Those trees there are on this was city property. That's why they were removed.
All right. Well, maybe this fence here, maybe that's kind of, so it's going to be somewhere in here. So it's going to be set back from the road. The corner's clear. No, it's not obstructing traffic in any way. I think that neighbors have the right to weigh in at the ZBA. David?
You're suggesting, Mr. Chairman, that the property line is inside the tree line and that the trees that were taken down weren't on his property?
That seems to be what Eric's saying.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. So at least 10 to 12 feet from the edge of pavement is city property.
Right. So the fence will be in this photograph. The fence will be kind of running along where my cursor is going. So there'll
Like,
be
they
8 to
turn
10.
into the house.
There'll be 8 to 10 feet of grass before you get to the fence.
I was concerned about snow pileup, for example, but I guess that's not a concern.
No.
No, it'll be plenty of room for snow plows and snow storage in that area when they do their plowing.
Okay. Any more discussion from the board? Do I have a motion?
A fucking fence.
Excuse me? Excuse me?
That was just a rude person that's on this meeting, Mr. Chairman. Ignore him.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please mute
Oh, I'm
yourself.
sorry.
No, they can't.
You just said it, Ken.
Whoops.
Well, I certainly am not moved.
We can
to
still
make a
hear you,
motion
so
at
please
this
mute
point.
yourself.
What's up?
You got the volume on that. I didn't know that.
I have muted you myself, so no worries now.
Reminder to the public that we are in a public forum. Decorum is required. If we were in a room together, those words would not be uttered. And so please just remember that we're all here working for everyone's good, and that comments like that are not helpful.
And unacceptable.
So
So, Mr. Chairman, you were asking for a motion.
I was.
Charles?
Charles.
George?
Yep, I would make a motion to forward a positive recommendation to the ZBA.
I'll second that. Charles Roberts, aye. George Tlemcen.
Do you want to ask if there's further discussion, Charles?
Further discussion?
Can I just note that anyone who does want to have a comment or anything should go to the zoning board meeting for this next week? I think that's what the letter stated, right, Eric? To the butters?
Correct. June 9th, 7 p.m.
Right. All right. Thanks. Vote.
Just taking a moment here. let everybody let it all just sink in for a minute here.
Marinate in it.
Okay. Charles Roberts, aye. George Tlemcen.
Aye.
David Chichester.
Abstain.
Emily Esch.
Aye.
Okay. Next order of business. ZBA recommendation for the application of Ellen Bull for property located at 58 Deerfield Street, which is located in the general commercial zoning district, for a special permit pursuant to sections 204.9C6 and 208.3 of the zoning ordinance in order to allow the continued use of the property as a single-family home at this location. Is there an applicant present?
I'm present. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. If you could state your name, address for the record.
My name is Eben Bull. My current address is 133 East Street in Hadley, Mass.
Thanks, Eben. Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself and present your request here.
So I'm in contract to purchase this property. It was a former church, and the current owner purchased it in 2008 from the Catholic Church, and she applied at that time for a special permit to use it as a primary residence, single family residence. She's an artist, and was using the the large upstairs space for various sculptural works. And I believe she removed a bunch of pavement in the back of the property and a number of other things that were required to satisfy the permit. And I I intend to use the building for essentially the same purpose, a single family residence. I'm also an artist and a musician. And yeah, at this point, I don't have any immediate plans to make any significant changes to the structure aside from doing some of the maintenance work that I think she intended to do originally and hasn't gotten around to. Primarily some repairs to the drainage on the exterior, new paint job, and things of that nature.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, I will add one thing to his presentation, and that is one of the conditions of the special permit was that it ran specifically with that owner because it was a church and they wanted to see how a single family home would work. So usually a special permit runs with the land forever, but in this case, it was tied to a specific owner. So the new owner just wants to keep the use going, and he has to do this because of that condition.
Thanks, Eric. And how long again has it been operating as a single family?
Since 2008.
2008. George?
Thanks. Eric, so since there is some period where it has been used in that way, if the ZBA were to approve this, would this be only for this new owner or would it be in perpetuity?
In the preliminary discussions with the chair of the zoning board, yeah, typically they don't put a condition on that it ties to the owner. So this would likely run with the land in the future.
Okay. Thank you.
My question, George. Great thought.
I'll just to add on to that. Yeah, the condition on the initial special permit has been a real sort of a bit of a hurdle for me in getting, lending and that kind of thing, because it's been a bit of a chicken and chicken and egg scenario. But the current owner, beyond what was required for the initial special permit, has put an incredible amount of work into updating a lot of the systems, electrical work and stuff, which isn't really reflected in what you see on the exterior. But the inspection report that I got as a prospective buyer was very positive. The building is in great shape, structurally very sound, and it has a really interesting history. And I'm just looking to preserve and the status quo in terms of use and preserve the building itself, because I come from a family of contractors and builders and carpenters, as does the current owner. And, I just think it's a very special place and, deserves a new steward who really cares about it. So.
Great. George?
Yeah, I'll just comment. I think, this is a very dense neighborhood, residential neighborhood, and it's so much better to have this building be used and cared for rather than be sitting vacant. So, and I will make a motion to forward a positive recommendation to the ZBA.
Any further discussion? Okay, George Tlemcen?
Aye.
David Chichester?
Aye.
Emily Esch?
Aye.
Charles Roberts? Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just add one more thing, because thanks. I wish my skateboarding days weren't over, because the skate park looks great. My 44-year-old knees are not going to take it, but
right.
You can bike there and watch.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Just put the benches in. Yeah, fill up my water bottle. All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Even. Bye-bye. Next order of business is a discussion with Clara Lopez on a potential zoning amendment to allow a carport and other structures that do not meet current setback requirements to be allowed. Is Ms. Lopez here? It appears that I'm not seeing her name as I scroll down the list. Eric, doesn't sound like, seems like she's not here.
Yeah, let me just explain what the request was and how it got to you. And then if you decide, we can put this on the agenda for the next meeting, and I'll make sure she's present. But she requested a variance from the zoning board for a carport structure she already purchased. But it was in the setback area, and it's a structure that must meet setbacks, accessory structure. So she requested a variance, knowing that it's difficult to get, and the ZBA denied the variance as predicted. But David Singer, a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, suggested that perhaps a zoning amendment could be done to deal with similar situations, and it advised her to try to reach out to the board to see if that could be done, and hence why that's on tonight's agenda. And I was hoping she would be here to explain her thoughts on the matter, but if you want, we can add this to the next agenda.
Yeah, let's invite her back. If she wants to, if she has specific things she wants to talk about. I mean, it seems like an issue that, you know, it sounds like it's you know, it's there are so many conditions in Greenfield where it might or might not be appropriate that it would be a tricky one to sort through. George?
Eric, could you just let us know what section of the zoning ordinance this would be relevant to? So I'd like to do a bit of homework on it.
Yes, I think if I can remember, to section 200-6.1, then it's somewhere in there. Actually, it's 6.2, accessory structures section where the fence section is, the same section as that. And there's a portion of that deals with accessory structures and the size requirements and the setbacks based on size.
Okay. Thank you. I assume you never have to refer to the ordinance itself. It's just all up there. Thank you.
Most of it by now, but not all of it.
Thanks, Eric. I mean, is this something that the board feels like it would be worth, you know, picking up?
Yes.
George?
Go ahead, Emily, sir.
Oh, I was just gonna say yes. I think it's important to hear from her about it, and like Charles said, it seems like there's a lot of nuance to it. I would like to go back to 6.2 and review it.
Yeah.
Before talking to her.
And
George?
to me, it's a helpful additional context that David Singer had suggested us exploring this as well. So,
yeah,
I'd like to honor that thought he had.
David, any objections to?
No, I think we should pursue it.
Okay, let's invite her back, and maybe she can make the next meeting.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eric. Okay.
Now the big one.
Yeah. Oh, I must have the wrong agenda. Oh well, this meeting.
Marijuana discussion time.
Board discussion of a potential moratorium on marijuana cultivation facilities and on potential amendments to the zoning ordinance relative to marijuana establishments. First of all, I know that's why most folks are here, and thank you for waiting with us through the first half of the meeting, or maybe the first 2/3, or we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So, Eric, did you want to just make a brief sort of synopsis of where things stand now relative to sort of the moratorium, where its status, and sort of what it is that we're discussing this evening?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
I will, the 3 points that I emailed to you, I will go over right now. So the first thing is a citizen petition zoning article was, a zoning amendment was submitted to the city clerk to propose a moratorium and suggest to the city that it research setbacks and other things to improve the ordinance to better protect neighborhoods, which is a very good thing. Our city attorney reviewed this citizen petition zoning amendment, and his legal opinion is that it was not validly written and the city cannot move forward with it. So that's unfortunate. Joint public hearing was still held May 10th, and both the planning board and the EDC got to hear people's thoughts on the matter, which is also good. So that's the first point. The second point is that today's meeting, you will not be providing a recommendation on that because it's invalid. What you're doing tonight is on your own initiative, knowing that it's an important matter, going to discuss and potentially initiate a moratorium on outdoor marijuana cultivation facilities to forward it to the city council for their consideration. This is separate than the citizen petition article completely. The third point I want to make is that unfortunately, even if the city adopted a moratorium on all outdoor marijuana cultivation facilities tomorrow, it would not apply to 446 Country Club Road. Why? Because they submitted what's required an approval not required plan that was endorsed by the planning board on May 5th. And so because of that, it puts by mass general law a 3-year zoning freeze on that property. So that any zoning amendment that occurs from the date of endorsement to 3 years, any zoning change does not apply to that property. So a moratorium is a zoning amendment. It would not apply to 446 Country Club Road. And that's the third point I wanted to make.
Thank you, Eric. And again, I guess the problem with the initial citizens petition was that it didn't stipulate a time frame. It was too general. Is that correct?
That was one of the points. Also, it didn't list the specific section of the zoning ordinance. You know, zoning ordinances have to be written up in a certain manner to be acceptable under mass general law. It unfortunately, that one was not.
Emily?
And also it didn't list specific, very specific issues they had. It was more of a general consensus or concern. But anyways, so my question was, Eric, May 5th of the A&R approval, was that this year?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it was May 5th. It was either May 5th or May 5th. It was May 5th.
Okay.
George?
Thank you, Charles. So, and I appreciate the introduction, Eric. So essentially the public hearings were held based on the petition as a potential amendment. We're considering, we discussed that at our last meeting and are potentially going to initiate, inspired essentially by the petition, we could initiate a moratorium on that tonight. And that would trigger another round of, or another public hearing. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay, so it's restarting that process.
Correct.
Thanks.
Emily?
But George, it excludes the property that the public hearing was on. It's going to basically be grandfathered in. They have 3 years where we can't change it.
Correct.
George?
Yeah, no, I'm totally understand that.
Okay.
I'm just trying to be clear about and you know, that is something that would go through the current review and approval process with the current, depending on if and when it gets submitted. It's not submitted that I know of at this point officially. Is that right, Eric?
The board has to take, the planning board needs to take a vote whether to initiate that draft moratorium I prepared or not.
Understood. No. I'm referring to the Country Club Road proposal that is involved in all this. I didn't know if any actual proposal has been submitted to your department for?
Oh, that's a great question, George. And no, we have not received any plans for that property at all yet.
Okay.
David?
But I do appreciate, Emily, the double checking, because I agree, the more clear we are about what we're talking about and everybody understands, the better. Sorry, David.
David?
Didn't mean to cut you off.
I feel as though you folks have to drag me along here a little bit. If I understand again what Eric just said, the proposal for a moratorium that was presented as a result of the petition, and I think some conversation that the council had, that particular one did not apply. But do we know what will apply? Do we
Well,
know
that's what we're going to talk about tonight.
Eric, the amendment or the motion that you had drafted, do you feel as though that would work?
Yes, I'm somewhat of an expert in writing zoning amendments. So yes, that will pass muster with no problem.
It doesn't define what the moratorium does or what happens within it, other than the time frame. In other words, what happens to new projects that might be presented. It doesn't say anything about that. It just says moratorium. So maybe somewhere else there is a definition of moratorium.
No, moratorium would just go with the strict what do you call it, a dictionary definition. So, it doesn't need to be defined the term moratorium. It's clearly what everyone is clear on what that is. So what a moratorium amendment does is just state the time period. That's very key. In my experience, if you try to do over a year and a half or over, it would likely be illegal because it's too long. It's too long of a sunset clause. You could do up to a year, no problem, which is why I proposed 1 year. And that the moratorium language clearly states why the moratorium is being done and what the moratorium is on. The moratorium will be for 1 year, all outdoor marijuana cultivation facilities that come in once this is adopted wouldn't be able to happen until the city and most of the planning board comes up with specific amendments to section 200-7.17, the marijuana regulations. We want to study setbacks. We want to study other things. That will have to go through its own separate process for adoption. This moratorium just puts a stop on that for a year so that we can do the research clearly identified in the moratorium language.
And then will there have to be a public hearing and then it has to go to the city council for approval?
Correct. Any proposed amendments that we do during the moratorium will have to go through the full process as well.
But the motion to have the moratorium also has to go through
Correct.
Hearing?
Just like a regular zoning amendment. It is a zoning amendment. Yes.
It is an amendment.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry to be quite so innocent about this, but I'll
So
learn.
that's great. I think it's helpful for the public to hear this too.
Great questions. Great questions.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Charles, I wondered if it would be helpful to actually screen share the draft, the proposed amendment Eric put together.
Yeah,
Just
that
run
was
through
that was the next thing I was going to do. I thought it would be great to let's read through it and so the public can sort of see what's on the table.
But can I just, for my own, and I'm sorry to be redundant, but this proposed one, Eric, this won't apply to the country club property, correct?
The one that we are considering tonight, any moratorium will not apply to 446 Country Club Road for 3 years, period of 3 years.
Right, for 3 years, it won't do anything because of what we voted on May 5th.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Do you want to read through this, Eric, or shall I?
I can read through it. So when you do a moratorium, you got to pick a certain section of the zoning ordinance to put it under. That's the first thing you got to consider. So section 207-3 was reserved. There used to be a ordinance under that was removed by the city. So that is a kind of a placeholder, a reserved spot for future zoning amendments or additions. So I picked 200-7.3, which was reserved for this proposed moratorium. The language has to be clear that it's temporary moratorium, which is the first word used under that, temporary moratorium. And it has to be clear on what the moratorium is on, and very clear on outdoor marijuana cultivation facilities. So the purpose has to be stated. You have to have a purpose statement of why you're doing the moratorium. And we're doing this to address the effects that such facilities could have in the city and residential neighborhoods. There's a definition of what a marijuana cultivator is, so it's clear. And then section C is the most important section. It gives you the time frame of the moratorium. And I'm giving it 1 year from June 30th to June 30th of 2023. The board can feel free to amend any of this or include a longer time frame, but I would recommend never going over a year and a half. And so I think it's pretty straightforward, the rest of it.
And so you know, we've gotten lots of great email from folks, and one of the a common recommendation or hope is that we put a limit on an immediate limit on I think it was tier 1, you know, cultivation facility sizes. And so I think that what this moratorium would do is it would limit all tier levels, and so there's no possibility of any tier being able to be presented forward as in an outdoor grow facility.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. And I think one of the amendments that will be done during this year period, if you initiate this and if the city council adopts it, is that we would consider limiting any type of outdoor facility to tier 1, tier 11, but 1 tier 11, not 3 tier 11s. I think that's excessive, and we could easily do that.
And then we can also talk about, you know, minimum lot sizes to support various tier levels.
Correct.
Emily?
So I read the letter from the Office of Attorney General Maura Healey, and she said that in the moratoriums, for them to be constitutionally sound, that we need to have specific things outlined, because it's been 3 years since the law which allows facilities has been passed, so it's no longer considered to be new or unknown to towns, even though it is, you know, new to us. It's not in the eyes of, I guess, Boston. So I was wondering if we should, it's my thought that we should add in a couple of specifics of things that we're looking at and considering, one being the tiers, and then 2, the other biggest thing that is my personal concern, and then also what I read in a lot of the comments, is the water usage and that's impact. But that was my takeaway from Maura Healey's letter.
Eric, what do you think about adding some specific points of concern that we want to look at?
Well, I mean, I need to read that Attorney Healey's letter, but based on my experience, I mean, why would we do that? What if we don't do it? What if, I mean, there's many things we have to consider, and that's it. But I think the moratorium is clear of why we're doing it, to study the impacts that we could have on the city as a whole and the residential neighborhoods. There may be some things that we're not even considering now that'll come up during this 1-year moratorium. The moratoriums I've seen weren't that specific. They were drafted as I drafted this one, you know, to give a basic purpose, time frame, and basically that's it, you know. So I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, he's the Attorney General, so he's probably right, but it's my personal experience. I haven't seen it, and if we want to put specific things in there, I don't know.
Well,
go either way.
Eric, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea, would it, to maybe, you know, take a look at the letter or the bulletin that Emily has from the Attorney General, draft our, you know, make any changes that you may think are appropriate or maybe none, and then run it by our attorney, just to make sure that, you know, we're on solid ground with everything in the way it's written, and then and then issue it out.
No,
You're
no,
definitely
not a
the
bad
expert,
idea.
Eric. I just wanted to put it out there that that was my only concern, is for it to be solid. But you're definitely the expert in this.
I'm sorry, what was that last comment, Emily?
Eric's definitely the expert in this. I just,
okay.
And I'll defer to his expertise. I just wanted to put out my takeaway and my one concern out there. But he is the expert. You guys are, so.
Mr. Chairman, also, I appreciate that. Don't know how much of an expert I am, but I have some experience. Definitely, I appreciate that. I think the state is concerned that a lot of these communities are outright against it, and they're just putting very long moratoriums on everything, and not even studying the issue. And so that was the state's concern, and especially the sunset clauses of 2 years, 3 years. A lot of these were very long moratoriums, but some of them have no end dates. So that was the state's concern, probably why that came out. But I think one I have as written is okay, and we know the issues, and it's clearly stated in the record that we will consider limiting to 1 tier 11. So we can go from there.
George?
Yeah, I mean, I know we had a list and it's in our record about concerns about tier size, water usage, setbacks, a number of other things. So I don't know, I don't have a particular strong opinion of what we have would strike me as sufficient and supportable with a reference to the record of our previous two, especially the last discussion that we had, because we were very clear about the issues that we were wanting to use the moratorium time to research. So I don't know if it would have to be actually in the ordinance. And the other thing, I'm so sensitive to time issues. So I wanted to check, Eric. So say we were to vote tonight to initiate this process, and then when does it affect any additional proposals that might come forward? Again, not country club, don't want to mislead anybody, but if there's an additional outdoor cultivation proposal for the rural residential that came tomorrow, will that be on hold because if we were to vote to initiate that tonight? Would that potentially be affected by the moratorium, or does it wait till the city council votes?
Great question. Neither. So basically, the zoning, the proposed moratorium goes into place at the first posting of the public hearing. That's when it is now in effect, unless voted down by city council.
Okay.
So
okay.
I was just gonna. So if the board decided to initiate this tonight, and then you would post the hearing, can you do it as soon as tomorrow, or something that happens next week, or and if you could just talk about that, and then also just I guess the overall time frame for the public hearing from the time it's posted to when the city council actually would hear it.
Sure, I can go over some time frames. So let's say the board voted today to initiate this proposed moratorium, report it to the city council. They then have, it should be 14 days to remand it back to the Economic Development Committee and the Planning Board to both hold a public hearing. They can do it separately or jointly. Typically, it's a joint public hearing, the EDC and the Planning Board. So once I get it back from the city clerk's office saying the city council has received this and now is initiating the full process, schedule a public hearing. Until I get that, I can't schedule the public hearing. But once I get that, I schedule the public hearing. And once it's scheduled, let's say I send it to the recorder. It's not in effect then, but the first day that the recorder gets it out and that we post it publicly, that's when it is in effect, unless voted down by city council.
And so this could, if it were voted by us tonight, it could be potentially considered at the June council meeting to have it then forwarded to us in the EDC.
The meetings would happen in June, but it would likely be a July city council vote.
Oh, wait, but just to make sure we're talking about the same thing here. So the city council doesn't vote to approve our initiation.
No,
Okay?
no, they do not.
Right.
So what is the mechanism? I'm just trying to see what has to coincide with an actual city council meeting. So the city council taking our initiative and then forwarding it to us, back to us and the EDC for a joint hearing. Does that happen outside of a city council meeting?
I think that happens at it. No, that's a good question. I think it's just acknowledgement from the city clerk's office that it was received. You know, that's a good question.
Unless they do a specific vote to like call a special vote to vote it down, then it still qualifies as having given notice through the paper, and then it would stand.
Yeah, okay, so now I get the confusion. So when I say unless voted down by city council, that I'm talking about the very final vote after all public hearings are held and everything is done. The final vote, if they vote it down, then it's no longer in effect.
Okay, but it would still be in effect until and if that happened. Okay, thank you. I definitely was confused there.
Right.
Correct.
Right. So the sequence is we initiate. It's posted. The public hearing for the EDC and the planning board is posted, and that's where the moratorium kicks in.
Correct.
So my bias or my preference would be to vote on this tonight. So I would be disinclined. I appreciate very much, Emily, your research. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an attorney general, but I just I have a sense that this language as we have it would be supportable, especially given the record that we have. It could be referenced to of, you know, we're not just generally avoiding it, and the fact that this is specific to outdoor grow cultivation facilities. It's not all facilities in the city, a moratorium on those. So my inclination would be to vote on this tonight. The one variable I wanted to discuss a little bit is I do think, as all of us who discussed it last time agreed, the moratorium is important to really dig deep and make some changes. I think we had talked about at least one member of the board said at least a year. A couple of us had talked about 6 months to a year. I know the feedback we've gotten from the public has been equally somewhat varied. Some people at least a year, some people a year, and some people said 6 months. One question, Eric, is because I want us to be able to thoughtfully and diligently improve our ordinance. I also don't want to unnecessarily restrict proposals for development that could be coming and would be respectful to impacts. So one thought I have is to do a 6-month moratorium, and I'm wondering if that could be renewed if within 6 months we hadn't completed the research or the process. Just throwing that out there as a potential scenario.
Yeah, if you do a 6-month one, you'd have to start the process over once it expires.
Right.
But,
right.
Given that the Franklin Regional Council of Governments is working on their cluster open space ordinance, we may be considering Clara Lopez's issue. These other amendments coming up. I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff going on. I want to give this one a very careful thought, and that's why I thought a year would give us a lot of time to do it right. We have no proposals for outdoor facilities except the big one, 446 Country Club Road, which is not effect. I'm not aware of any other discussions or anybody else coming in, even looking at farmland and Greenfield for cultivation. So I don't think we're going to be holding up potential developers that much by a year worth of the moratorium.
Thank you.
Emily?
Eric, if we did it in less than a year. We felt like we were nice and thorough and we came to agreement. Is it possible to shorten it, to go in and amend it to shorten it if we finish ahead of schedule, if we do have that year?
Yes, you can always end the moratorium by adoption of the new amendments.
Okay. Okay.
Good one, Emily.
Right.
Nice. Hadn't thought of that.
Okay, so I will then, George, take your thunder and make a motion to initiate this moratorium process as written.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, thanks everybody for thinking so hard about this. George Tlemcen.
Aye.
Emily Esch.
Aye.
David Chichester.
Yes.
Charles Roberts. Aye. Okay, so it's initiated. Thank you all.
I have a discussion item.
Okay.
Could I just, is this related to this issue, Emily?
Oh, no, sorry.
Is it okay, Charles, if I just make a comment?
Yes.
I just want to say I do, as I mentioned before, the moratorium proposal we just voted on was inspired by citizen activism. And I just want to honor that activism and participation. And it is ironic and very troubling that the thing that motivated people is not affected by this, of course. But I just wanted to acknowledge that and acknowledge the hard work people have been putting into this. So
thanks, George.
Just want to say
Thank
that.
you.
Nice.
Good.
Hey, Emily.
I have a question about, so a couple months back, we discussed the possible special permit to sell cars out on Silver Street, where the ambulances are.
Yes.
I went by there yesterday and he is selling cars out there. And from my recollection, we did not approve that. So I was wondering, what happens now?
Well, I thought that was a special permit recommendation to the ZBA.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So what your planning board did was provide a positive recommendation. It wasn't unanimous, but it was a positive recommendation to the zoning board. And the zoning board unanimously approved the special permit, which allows
then
him.
my question is moot.
So he is operating under a valid special permit and adhering to it.
Okay, great. I'm the only one who voted no, so I apologize for not following up on that zoning thing and then wasting y'all's time.
It's okay.
So.
It's okay. I have a question, Eric, about the status of the sign ordinance and where we are in the public hearing process for that. Don't we have to have a new? We have to schedule a new public hearing with the EDC for that because the ordinance was significantly changed.
Very great question. Glad you brought that up. So I reached out to the city clerk's office late last week or early this week to ask about that, because usually they send it back saying now schedule a public hearing, as I mentioned earlier. They didn't do that, but they did that today. So I have the notice to proceed to schedule the public hearing. It's the planning board's turn to host the joint public hearing. I will prepare the legal notice and probably won't be doing that until mid next week when I can schedule it. I won't be able to schedule it this week.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Yeah, I was just, hadn't. George?
Yeah, I hadn't heard either, and I was getting worried about what's happening with the sign ordinance, but they responded, and now we can move forward with the final step.
All right, great. Thanks. George? George, you're muted.
I just fleetingly saw what looked like a question in the chat. I just want to mention again that I know with these virtual meetings, it's been so frequent that we just use the chat a lot. It is because the chat is not visible to anyone else who is watching this meeting, the recording of the meeting or something like that. It's against open meeting law to utilize the chat. So rather than respond to whatever that question is, but we want people to seek out information. So I want to encourage whoever wrote that or has other questions to contact Eric Twarog, and he can either answer it, he might refer it to the board. So I just want to, we want to, have people involved, but give you a proper channel for that involvement.
Thanks, George. So I thought that was a great presentation this evening from FERCOG, and definitely looking forward to getting more input from them and moving the open space community development ordinance along. I think there's some good incentives there, some good things to think about for density and affordability, and also sustainable development practices all rolled into one. So it's a great thing. Motion to adjourn?
No. Charles?
Yes.
Sorry, just to head you off. I did want to re-raise what I brought up from last month's or last meeting's minutes about we now don't have a representative on the Community Preservation Committee.
I took the construction one, guys. Come on, someone else. Dave, it's your turn.
I'm an alternate.
That's true.
That's interesting.
Oh, can an alternate take the
interesting
the seat on the Community Preservation Development?
Yes.
Seat.
I just decided that.
Are you volunteering, David?
I will do it if it is legal.
Dave.
Yes, it is legal. You're on the planning board.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Dave. Yeah, I think that's such a it was such a strong recommendation of the master plan, which is a planning board document, and so it's a shame that Mark had to leave the board and also to leave that post, but appreciate your being willing to serve in that regard.
Absolutely. Is this something we vote on, Eric, or is it just
I think, don't you probably do that, Charles? Is your powers as chair?
That's right.
Really? I make it happen. David.
So my nomination is null. You have to do it, Charles. Because I'm only the lowly clerk here.
Okay, so I'll nominate David Chichester to be the planning board representative for the Community Preservation Act.
I hear no seconds.
Pulled in.
By acclamation. Thank you, Dave.
Good.
You're a really fun group.
And I know it was discussed at the last meeting when it was announced that Mark Maloney was stepping down, that leaves a vacancy on the planning board, and that if an alternate wants to be elevated to that, it would be prudent to contact the mayor, because that's not an automatic process.
Right.
Can I comment on that?
Sure.
I'm 85 years old. I think that's too old for a new member to come onto the board and represent a strength. I think the board deserves to have someone who's younger and who can plan to be there for a long time and can build a different attitude and a different approach to what we do. I'm perfectly happy to do this as an alternate, but I would like to step back and give others an opportunity to be a regular member of the board.
Aw, Dave.
Okay, David. Well,
thank you. That's sweet. That's
thank
nice.
you for that. Amy, do you want to petition the mayor for a full membership seat, full voting seat?
Come on.
Let me think. Think about it. No pressure. Just run it by your think tank, and if you are interested, you can you could just let Eric know, and go ahead and reach out to the mayor. If not, that's fine too. Then we have a great audience out here, and you should all know that we're looking for another member for the planning board, whether it's a voting or an alternate member at this point. We don't know.
And it's by mayoral appointment. So
but it's by mayoral appointment. So yeah, feel free to reach out to the mayor and express your interest.
We meet bi-weekly, and as you can hear, we actually have we do have an impact in our community, and it's fun too.
It is. George?
Yeah, sorry, I want to put off the adjournment one more time. Speaking of meeting, I wondered about us shifting back to in-person meetings. My understanding is that the governor's executive order adjusting some of the open meeting law standards expires July 15th. I don't know, Eric, if you've heard of any talk about it being extended further, but that would mean we would start. That would be one of our meeting days, I think. So I don't know if it would go into effect that day, but so it's important. And I believe, well, I know that the John's On is hybrid ready. I don't know how those meetings are working out when they're done in a hybrid fashion, but so that members of the public could also hopefully participate as they are now, or remotely. So correct any of that if I'm wrong, Eric, please.
Yeah, so it is July 15th. There are some, there's a bill being proposed in the state government, which includes a provision to extend that to December, to allow for virtual meetings all the way to December, but it has not been adopted by the state yet. So right now it is July 15th. We are moving from Webex to Zoom starting July 1st. So if we do continue virtual meetings, it will be on the platform of Zoom, which is a little easier than Webex. The hybrid meetings, that's a great idea. We will do that, but if we do return to in-person meetings starting July 15th, we will, it'll take me a little bit of time to get used to the technology and get it in so it works. So, probably first meeting or two will just be strictly in person until we figured the hybrid situation out.
And I'll just add too, I had researched with Kathy Scott, the clerk. I was just researching it for the master plan implementation committee, and for a board member to participate remotely, there are 5 distinct categories: illness, emergency, geographic location, and a couple others. But so we do have that possibility, but it's pretty limited what the criteria are to participate for a board member to participate remotely. And that has to be, we have to have an in-person quorum, and the reason that someone is participating remotely has to be announced by the chair and documented in the minutes. So,
we still have to have an in-person quorum, so we couldn't have 2 people in person and 1 person on video.
Correct.
So it's still really important to muster that quorum for every meeting. Yeah,
but also people couldn't participate remotely for convenience.
Right.
Or so.
Right.
So.
Good point, George.
Yeah, I think in-person meetings would be good. There's always a little bit of nervousness, but in the end, I think that it improves the whole deliberative process, and
we won't have outbursts like earlier tonight in person.
Right, I know it. That's the thing. Isn't that great? All right. Anything else from folks? I know I did a premature motion to adjourn.
I'll second it now.
Okay, excellent. We've already had our discussion, but any further? All right, all in favor?